Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Norm.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year indeed.
Well, we haven't seen each other in a while.
We were on hiatus. Isn't that the term?
Hiatus?
What you people
It's one term, except that we were all working hard the entire time.
Oh, no, I was off all of December.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah, I took December off.
when you say that people are like, when you see that shows are on hiatus,
Yeah.
it's like people are just, sleeping in.
But Will wasn't sleeping in.
No, he had baby.
Will's got a baby.
He has baby.
So it's not like you had December as like a relaxing read with a beer on your chest all afternoon type of month.
So when my wife said, hey, I think you should take the rest of the paternity leave that you didn't take in January and December, I thought, man, that is a great idea. I'm going to hang out at home. I'm going to work on some projects. I'm going to play some video games, watch some movies.
Yeah.
And she thought, I'm going to have a nanny. And
Mr. Nanny.
in the twain shall meet somewhere in the middle, and it was a good time for everyone.
It's a tricky balance, isn't it?
You know what? It was. I'm really glad I did it though, because it was a really good time to be around the baby. Like
Really?
she's a year old now. She's developing personality. She's becoming a human being. She's like starting to walk and toddle around, and like the house needed to be fixed so that it's baby proof.
Yeah.
And like it was a fun time to see.
And when
time
you're
with the
home
kid.
that whole time, you find huge swaths of time to be chilling and like the
Yeah.
baby sleeping on your chest kind of thing. And
Yeah.
It's not
You take
having
it- she
to
takes a nap.
drive half an hour for a commute or something every day.
Yeah, there's
Each
an hour you
way.
get back each day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's big.
The other thing that I definitely noticed though is that you do get kind of bored. Like there's like the time with the baby is great,
Cabin fever.
but then
Home.
there's like, what am I supposed to be doing?
You know, in studying fallout shelters in the 1960s, the number one thing for keeping people disciplined in the shelters was keeping them busy and productive and altruistic.
Yeah.
And so, alleviating stress.
That's funny because I've been thinking lately about food variations and how much we love to make our food taste interesting, right? And I was thinking, I'll bet that it's actually genetic. I'll bet that it's evolutionary.
Yeah.
Right? Our desire for variance in our diet is actually makes us go seek new things, and that parts of your body can shut down if you have a completely monochromatic diet.
You have to have the small amounts of trace elements that come in.
Right, and that's a fascinating to think about. Like
Or monochromatic life in every aspect.
right, and so Hadfield, I sort of tossed Hadfield Commander Hadfield when I interviewed him at NASA. I tossed him a softball as a closing question because I wanted to sort of deputize the audience to spread this word. But I said, why do we need a space program? And, I know that that's the central question that he is out there answering. And he had this beautiful answer in which he said, every generation of humans for 40,000 years have taken their best and their brightest young people and pushed them to the edge of the frontier.
They're
And
probes.
That is what we do as a species. It's not like we have to do it. It's like we need to do it. It's just a thing that we do. And this is the furthest example of that,
I would have just said Velcro, but
which was not invented as part
I
of the space
know.
program.
So many myths.
Total myth.
So
well,
many
okay. So then the Fisher Space pen,
Hang.
that's fine.
Okay.
there was
I like the Russian
mission.
pencil myself. Another myth.
Yeah, all myths.
That's a separate show.
But wait. So we had off. I will tell you when my boys were first born in early 1999 and 2000, I was working at ILM, but it's freelance work. So I was only working there about half the time, about 6 or 7 months a year. And the rest of the time I was at home cooling my heels. Now I had a shop at home, so I was doing freelance work back then. But it meant that for a goodly portion of the first 3 years of my boys' lives, I was home.
And that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like I look at my friends who are contractors or whatever and are at home with their new kids, and I'm super jealous because it's one of those things that like on a work day, I get up in the morning and I help her eat breakfast. And then I go to work for 8 hours and I come home just in time. If I haul ass, just in time to either see the last 5 minutes of dinner or give a bath and read a book and chuck her into bed. And then she sleeps for the whole. Well, of course, the irony is that when the day I took off was the first day I was off was the first night she slept through ever.
Oh my God, Gina must have been pissed.
She was super pissed. So then she did that the entire break. And Monday, so last week Gina took her to Tennessee while Norm and I were at CES.
Yeah.
And Monday night slept none. Tuesday night slept maybe 3 hours. Last night was up at midnight and at 2 and at 2:30 and at 3. And since Gina's not nursing in the middle of the night anymore, guess whose problem the midnight baby is?
Dude,
which is only fair.
No, it's totally fair. Whenever I was working full time, my job with the boys was I had them from 6 p.m. till 6 a.m.
Yeah.
I was the sole caretaker from that point. And I mean, that meant that, when they were real infants, like 3 and 4 months, I would take them out at midnight and drive them around for 3 hours just to give my wife an unbroken period of sleep. And then at around 3 months, when I could take them out safely and feel like I was cool, I took them to restaurants twice a week and had dinner with friends. I'd place them in carriers on either side of the table, and they would, like, the goal was get them to sleep in the noisiest environment possible.
Yeah. So you told me to do that, and it was good advice. A couple of other friends said get the kids out as early as you can.
Absolutely.
And don't hole up, because if you hole up, you're going to be holed up for the first 5 years of their lives.
Oh, yeah. No, I've seen people put tape on their doorbell saying, don't ring the doorbell. Our baby might be napping. And I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You are training the kid to ruin your life.
We have a friend, Norm and I have a friend who their kid, they didn't run the dishwasher because it was loud. And the kid's 8 years old now, and they can't run the dishwasher after she goes to bed because she wakes up.
It's ridiculous.
So
train the kid.
You have to train your kids like you train a dog.
Get a loud asshole dog to
I had
bark
dinner
all the time.
parties in the kitchen right across from their room, like every week.
Yeah. So the thing about our baby is she's totally stoked. Like, she goes to a restaurant, she eats some food,
Yeah.
she zonks back and will go to sleep because crowd noise is happy for her.
Yes.
So which sounds kind of sick,
Which is
but
me
it's awesome.
too. No.
Yeah.
That's what I grew up with. That's how I grew up, and it was good enough for me. It was good enough.
Exactly.
You'll be able to sleep on planes also.
So now that the break is done, we're back in January, and I must say we had a planning week last week on Mythbusters where we plotted out, a goodly portion of this year's episodes.
So paint a word picture here. Is you're in a conference room with a bunch of people. There's whiteboards.
If you've ever seen any, a little fly there.
Yeah.
I thought you were just really happy about my answer.
One class.
Put your hands in the air. So if you've ever seen footage from inside Mythbusters, on the second floor above the shop, we have our offices where the APs sit. And outside of that office, there's some couches. And basically the entire crew sits there. And we've got a list of episodes that are approved by Discovery, which means that we've given them a rough outline.
And that's like a one-page thing, probably?
Yeah, barely even. Okay. It's more like a 2-sentence description of Indiana Jones special. We're going to do this.
Gotcha.
And they're like, okay, that sounds cool, but what if? And then we'll answer that. So they get that episode approved, and then we stand there with that list, and we just start going down it.
And does that list have like the 1-sentence pitch for the myths on it?
No, it doesn't. It's just because we all know what they are.
Okay.
Dan Tapstar, Jamie's and my co-executive producer, flies into town from Manchester, where he's based. So it's funny because we're in San Francisco. Our co-EP is in Manchester, and our show is cut and edited in Australia.
Yeah.
So Dan spends the mornings talking to Australia from Manchester, and the afternoons talking to San Francisco.
That's got to just break you.
His afternoons talking to us, but it's
mobile
great.
effort.
But it's great because we can get him on the phone first thing in the morning because that's like 2 o'clock his time, 3 o'clock his time. So Dan and Jamie and I, plus our APs, sit there, and I'm usually the one writing on the whiteboard because I really like outlining on the vertical. And we'll take the episode and we'll say, okay, what are the 3 major parts? And so first we'll discuss it. We'll sort of kind of rough it out. All right, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And then once we've got it we sort of agree on the overall structure, then we actually start to write out what the beats are. First experiment's going to be here in the shop. Then we're going to go to this location because we need some space to do this. And then once we start to see it, then we see, you know what? We have 3 experiments in the shop. We're going to need another location for this. So let's make this middle one here. And actually, I've always wondered about this. And frankly, one of the things that's happened over the last few years is we think that we've gotten a little too expert. Like, we're good enough.
But you guys have been doing this for a while.
We've been doing it for a while, but we're actually taking care of all the screw ups before they actually happen on camera. So we're trying to actually not overplot the show right now, so that stuff still remains on camera. The futzing around with plumbing to make sure something works kind of thing.
You could just hire some idiots.
No, that's us. We're the idiots.
Oh, right.
So once we plot it out, then there's usually some discussion over a couple of key points, like, well, I've always wondered about this, or I've always wondered about that, or my interpretation of this movie scene is this. And it turns out that all three of us, or four of us, with our director Steve Christensen, have totally different opinions about what that means, and that'll totally change where we plot it. So it takes about 3 hours to plot an episode.
It's kind of like the writer's room on a scripted
It is
show,
exactly
right?
like a writer's room, except a writer's room, they usually have, my friends who work in writer's room, there's one person who's transcribing everything all the writers are
Like a
saying.
stenographer?
And then they're writing it out on big walls of whiteboard. It's a totally...
flashcards
With this,
and rearranging.
It's like 5 of us and I'm doing the writing.
Is that documented at all, aside from your writing?
Well, I take pictures.
Okay.
I take pictures of that's going to be always my return reference point, is the picture of the whiteboard.
Yeah.
Dan will take it and type it up in a much more refined form so that Discovery can see what we're planning. And we may not follow that outline that he writes up at all, except that it is where we believe we're going to go.
It's the starting point.
It is the starting point. And frankly, once we get started, things could end up miles from there. But that was a full week of heavy mental work. And by the end, Dan and I were talking to each other like we were both just fracked.
Well, that's the kind of
exhausted.
thing. Like if you're the guy that's out working the jackhammer every day, you listen to somebody say, "Hey, that's really hard." But I mean, I think we've all probably worked jackhammers.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a different kind of tired. But you end up when you do that kind of long term planning and it's that intense over that period of time, it's exhausting.
And you come home and, Julia will say, listen, let's calendar the next 3 months. And I'll say, I can't do it tonight. My brain will not think on contingency planning like that right now.
Does it feel like coming up with a recipe? Or does it feel like...
It actually feels like writing. I mean, that's what it feels like, right? You got a deadline, you got 1,300 words, you got to get out and you got to make it refined like a magazine piece. That can be incredibly taxing at the end of a day. And you've got no more mental energy left to kind of do other stuff.
But and then you also have to have the collaboration aspect, which means it's not just what you're happy with, it's what everybody else in the room is happy with, and you all end up because I assume it's like knowing how you guys work. I'm sure it's not this is just the way it's going to be. I'm Adam Savage.
Nothing's unilateral like that. And actually, that makes it really fun because we end up genuinely arguing, although no one gets upset, but we genuinely argue over the most hilariously mundane minutia. But that's why this show works. That's why these plots are fun to come up with, because people are saying, no, he hurts his wrist. No, he hurts his knuckles. But which one is the test we're going to do? Why not do both? Look, let's get into it and creep up on it, and the actual answer will be really apparent.
This one's interesting because, and people get passionate. I mean, that's always great.
And then, then there's also discussions about like, how many minutes do we think we can get out of this? That's the other part. How many minutes do we think we can get out of this? It's like, we know that if we head out to do driving stuff on the Alameda Naval Base, we're going to get a lot of color because we love doing the driving stuff. But we also know that if we're doing Petri dish stuff, we're going to have to work to get screen time out of it. Yeah. We're going to have to be talking. This year also, we're trying to go back to in the planning we're doing, we're trying to go back to some Mythbusters roots where it's much more sort of organic and process oriented. Our plots have gotten really complex over the last few years. And we like that. We like peeling the layers of the onion and telling complex stories. But it's also meant that process has drifted. And we're trying to put that back in so that we're really talking about, like, I'm carving this out, like the build of the Tauntaun in the Star Wars special that aired on the 4th. Okay. That was a really good example of where we want to bring the show back to. There's like 3 full minutes of that final edited story that we're just building the Tauntaun. And that was really, that was a day and a half of work, and it was really fun.
A Tauntaun
I'm looking at the Tauntaun.
We're looking at right now, and it is impressive.
I built him in 2 days flat with a broken hand.
He's kind of dirty.
Yes, yeah, you had
He
the
is
casting
filthy.
And you said that's one of the most fun you've had in recent memory, just building something for the show.
Yeah. Oh, no, that was great. But we had a subject for this podcast.
We were going to talk about the holidays.
holidays.
We're just catching up.
So we're currently talking about.
The last time we talked
on
to
topic.
you on the show, we were doing it remotely, remember, over Skype. You were still in New York, I believe. To see the first snowfall.
Oh, that's right. I was staying at the Standard on the High Line. It was beautiful.
The magical
I got one little snowfall, which lasted about 3 hours, covered the city in white, and then it went away. But I walked everywhere.
So how was the rest of the tour and also your holiday break?
The tour was great. The tour was creatively satisfying on a whole different level.
Okay, so you ended up doing something like what, 28 stops,
28,
something like that?
28 cities. 28 cities in probably what was 24 states in 31 days.
And
insane.
huge props. I won a gentleman's bet that you wrote blog entries for all of them.
I did. I didn't miss one.
You didn't miss a single one. You caught up.
I got behind a couple of points.
But bravo.
Thank you. It's funny. I felt like an asshole telling you guys it's hard to write every day, given that both of you have been writing every day for decades. But it is hard to write every day. The last time we went on tour, the last time we went on a long tour, which is January of 2012, I found it really easy to not leave the bus for days at a time. Literally just sit there web surfing and writing and walking out to the theater for lunch and then walking back out for sound check and doing the show and coming back. This time I was determined not to do that. And in fact, getting out every day, looking for something to take pictures of and to write about and to get my brain working actually fed back into the show in such a deep way. It made me feel more physically fit, made me feel more active and more connected to the material.
Well, and connected to the people you're talking to, too, because you're going out and seeing their cities.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It gave me stuff to talk about each night when I was up in front of the crowd. And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I want to say the project. You also worked on a project.
Well, I did. I worked on a project which I still hasn't been officially revealed, even though a bunch of people on Tessit have been guessing it. I have to get back into that, which will be here at this very table in a couple of weeks. And it's funny, the project worked great for the first 12 days. Then we were in Canada over Thanksgiving break, and my wife, Julia, flew up to Canada to travel through the 4 cities we were there in Alberta, Edmonton, Calgary, and Regina. And we had a great time in Canada. The audiences are phenomenal. They love Mythbusters on such a deep level. It's really invigorating. But that sort of broke my rhythm with the project, and I never quite got back to it.
Well, things like that when you lose. And this applies to writing and pretty much anything else. Like if you get on a roll and you get a pattern where you get up every day and you go do this thing, and even if it's just for 45 minutes or an hour, like you read about novelists who literally get up in the morning and write 1,000 words a day, and then they go do something else the rest of the day.
And a lot of their routines are very much like that. 8 to noon we write, and then everything's
Jerry
open.
Seinfeld. He has a big calendar. And he marks every day he has to write something, and he can't break that streak.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about splitting that up is then it gives you time in the afternoon to go do something interesting. Because doing something interesting, like the times that I have nothing to write about, are when I haven't done anything interesting.
Yeah.
Or when I've been stuck in meetings all day and whatever. It's that stuff's tough.
Can you tell us about the best day ever? Because we haven't talked about it since.
Well, so before I tell about the best day ever, I want to talk about one of the other things that was incredibly creatively satisfying about the show was, we have performed, we adjust the show all the time. We added 2 entirely new set pieces to the show this time, and we'll keep on doing that. We have new ideas about stuff we want to bring in. I personally, since I do most of the talking during the show, I've got it so deeply in my head that but I don't do it on automatic pilot. I am always looking for a better way to say something to get the reaction I'm looking for. And as David Mamet says, you can blackmail an audience into a standing ovation, but you cannot blackmail them into a gasp. And I started looking for the gasps, and I started getting greedy for the laughs.
The thing that you guys do with the phone book was terrifying. I knew how it worked. I knew it was fine. terrifying.
And it's funny, I had to really learn that even though I've done a lot of these things 100 times, that I had to every night connect with the fact that this is still scary for this audience, and I've got to keep it there because they don't know that I've done this 100 times. And I want to build that tension. So I started playing around with, like, on a deeper level than I'd ever done before, every single night playing around with micro word changes. And then I would listen to the recordings later on the next day, and I would go and find jokes and see what the response was. And I'd basically, by the last show we did, which is in North Charleston, South Carolina, we had a script that was twice as tight as the script we began with, because I don't know if you know that the Marx Brothers, when they used to film, they would have a theater next door to the studio they were filming in where they were working the material every day. So for a quarter, you could go watch the Marx Brothers do like that scene that they were going to shoot later on that day 10 times, just so that they could find the wording that was the funniest.
Because changing 2 words can make a huge difference.
A huge difference. I mean, there's a joke in the Behind the Myths tour show where I tell a story about sharks and the protection of shark armor. And I started layering in this bit about real danger happening to us. And I noticed at the moment I did that, the laughs went down, and I realized I'm building too much danger and the audience isn't willing to laugh after that. I had to pull back the danger, even though I'm getting them excited, because I want the punch at the end.
It's like playing a musical instrument.
Look, basically what I did was I was lucky enough to have a format that allowed me a tiny viewpoint into what stand-up comedians do every single day. Work the material, work it, and find a wording and a comfort level and an understanding of the balance of the joke and the audience and the relationship to build a thing that is deeply satisfying to the audience and the performer. And like that tiny glimpse was it was thrilling. It was really fun. But the best day ever.
I want to hear about the best day ever. If I had known you were going to do this, I would have been on a plane on the way to Huntsville, Alabama.
If I had known. So,
oh my God.
So we are leaving Birmingham. We're leaving Birmingham, Alabama, which was a lovely town. A really, the economic downturn hit them pretty hard. It's a gorgeous town. The people could not have been nicer. I was like, I love Alabama. And then we're heading to Huntsville. So late that night. Oh, also, by the way, this was the last 3 days of the tour. So I pulled my kids out of school on their last day of school, and I flew them out to meet me in Birmingham.
Very nice.
So they got to actually live on the bus with me for the last 3 days. They got to sleep on the bunks.
Oh, nice. Feet first, crew. Right? Always feet first.
Feet facing the direction the bus is driving. Everyone does that.
Yeah.
So
you should test that. I don't know if it makes any difference at all.
Well, so they came out, and we had a great first evening. The boys are one thing too. They're 14 now, so they're less like children than delightful young gentlemen. And I had to kind of tell them, you're on a bus, and this isn't my bus. This is my crew's bus, and you're in someone's house, and it's 6 people's house. So you don't leave your shoes out there.
It's a tiny house.
It's a tiny house. And like, no one will say something to you. So that makes it doubly important that you don't screw up. Because you got to remember, they won't say anything to you, and they will go get you a muffin if you ask. So don't ask them for a goddamn muffin. So we go to sleep on that night, and we're driving to Huntsville. And so I look up, what can we do with the boys tomorrow? And I think, is there a science museum in Huntsville? I totally forget that this is where Wernher von Braun did all of his rocket testing.
It's where Space Camp is.
And that's what I find out. So I find out, oh my God, Space Camp. Great. Hours of Space Camp, 9 a.m. Terrific. That's what we're doing tomorrow. I'm waking up early, taking them to Space Camp. Then, before I even get a chance to do this, I'm like shaving, and Kelsey, who's my and Jamie's assistant on the tour, she knocks on the door of my room, which is just never happens because they don't usually ever need to talk to me, or she'll text me, but she knocks on the door, and I'm like, what? And she's like, normally I wouldn't interrupt you, but... And then she explains that 6 years before, she had been in Huntsville, and a stagehand at this very theater we're performing at had told her if she ever wanted behind-the-scenes access to Space Camp, when she came back through, he would offer that. So she went around asking, hey, who here has a connection to Space Camp? And it turned out that guy still worked there. And so she comes to me and she says, Space Camp wants to know if you and your boys want to scuba dive in Space Camp's astronaut tank.
Oh,
And I'm like, are you kidding?
I can't stop.
So it already was going to be a great day, but this just made it like twice as good.
So this is okay. So we saw the big tank in Houston.
So yeah,
This one is the size of the small one from the Apollo and
this
Mercury
is a
days,
24-foot diameter,
Yeah.
24-foot deep tank.
That is a big swimming
and what
pool.
is inside the tank?
What's inside the tank is a jungle gym made out of PVC and expanded polyethylene that is basically like when you're in scuba gear and in the thing, you're effectively neutrally buoyant. Everyone's wearing BCs. The water is kept at 85 or 80, 90 degrees, 85 or 90
it's
degrees.
warm.
It's really warm. And it's not just a heated swimming pool warm. It's genuinely like almost like a bath.
And do they do nitrox there, or do they do just compressed air?
Just compressed air, just
Okay.
breathable air. But because you're neutrally buoyant, this is effectively what it's like to move around. So there's truss systems built out of there's things to solve. There's like you can read a chart and turn valves to actually launch little buoyant rockets.
Do they put the kids in there at space camp?
They
Or is
do.
this- oh wow! I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
so the crew there is heavily practiced at taking kids who are not certified, certifying them, teaching them. So they ran the boys and me, just because I was there, through their little training program of,
resort
don't ever
certification
stop
or whatever, yeah.
breathing. Here's what you do. Don't do this, do that, etc. Here are the symbols. The hardest one to remember is thumbs up means we're going up.
Yeah.
Okay means I'm okay.
Yeah.
Don't give thumbs up to mean okay.
The most important thing of all is the never stop breathing.
Never stop
which
breathing.
seems like something you wouldn't have to do, but it's kind of you tend to hold your breath.
Exactly.
It's normal scuba gear. You're not,
Normal scuba gear, nothing exotic. I mean, frankly, I was hoping we'd wear spacesuits, but of course that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, maybe in Houston sometime.
Maybe in Houston someday. Houston, do you hear that? I would
NBL.
come to you and get in a spacesuit.
know a
Anyway,
guy.
so we scuba dived for about an hour and a half.
Okay.
And it was fantastic. It was really, really, really fun. The crew was awesome. They were, these are real educators. They've been doing this with kids for years. Space camp, a lot of great scientists have grown up going to space camp. It's a really terrific place. And my kids are totally pulling at my coattails to go this summer.
There's even that movie.
Yes, there's
That
even the
movie's great.
There's actually 2 space camp movies.
Wait, what?
There's 2 space camp movies I've heard. At any rate,
It's not like something untoward. For the
no.
second one. Okay.
No. There's no
It's like there's
slash.
not a
There's no
porn version,
space camp
right?
slash fic.
Okay.
Anyway, I can't believe I just said that. Anyway, so we get out and we're toweling off, and they say, "Would you like a tour of the facilities?" And I say, "Absolutely." And they say, "Is there anything particular about the space program that you are obsessed with?" And I said, "Spacesuits." And they said, Oh, hold on a second. They come back a few minutes later and they said, well, our curator's here. Would you like a tour of our climate-controlled Spacesuit Archives? Which is not open to the public.
No.
And it's all Apollo era and pre-Apollo era space hardware suits. They have a silver Apollo era suit.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't even know they made those.
I didn't know that either. There's only one apparently. They had helmets and visors and
They
gloves.
probably have like the Gemini pressure suits and then the spacewalk suit and stuff like that.
I don't know if they had Gemini. They did have a couple of Gemini era pieces. They did not have any Mercury era pieces. Most of it was Apollo.
Sorry, that's my fault.
Okay. It was. I had never gotten to see this stuff up close, but they gave us white cotton gloves so we could pick stuff up. I took tons of pictures because it's all public domain stuff. It allowed me to post them. And I made friends with the curator. He was fantastic.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I tell you, the saddest thing was there was this bucket of gloves and all of them like crushed and like deformed and everything. And I said, what is this? And he said, this is, we don't know what to do with this bucket. Basically, all of the early Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo era stuff is most of it's natural materials.
It's latex,
The
right?
cooling suits are latex and stuff like that. And all of this stuff rots. It really doesn't have a long shelf life. And so if it wasn't, if you got a cooling suit that was in 1972 folded up, and you pull it out of an archive now, you will never be able to unfold it. It'll turn to dust. And so there are these gloves that are all, molded to the hands and just crushed, and they don't know what to do with them. He said museums all over the country have buckets like this. And I said, I could easily see spending the later portion of my life as a conservator consultant for figuring out how to revivify this stuff,
restore.
either for museums or for archive purposes or for research to, I don't know, laser scan it, X-ray it, whatever it takes to kind of bring it back to life.
Could you replace the latex with another process?
Could you soak it in something? Could you at that point, 10 years from now, maybe we'll be able to 3D print rubber urethane. I know that we can do it to a certain extent now. So you got to really understand what a difficult problem it is to conserve this stuff. I got to handle a genuine Apollo era glove. They had bubble helmets. They had like 4 of the bubble helmets, and I learned things I never knew about this stuff.
The bubble helmets are just to be clear. The bubble helmets are the ones that they wore in the command module when they're taking off and landing.
In fact, though, it turns out the bubble helmets are inside the EVA helmets.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
No, I didn't know that either.
So
I thought that the bubble helmet was like a training helmet. He's like, no, that's what's inside the EVA helmet with all the visors.
So is the visor helmet then not pressurized?
The outer visor, the bubble helmet is still the thing that's pressurized, and the outer visor helmet is like a casing that goes over it.
So it's protection and shade.
And there's like 3. So the bubble helmet's the bubble helmet's Lexan or polycarbonate, and then there is a shield that goes over that, and then I think a secondary shield, and then a third gold shield. Right, so there's all these different.
Well, because you think about it, they're over-engineering the hell out of those because they're worried about everything from micrometeorite impacts to getting horrible sunburn.
And so you know how if anybody out there has ever handled military equipment, you know that it feels quite different than mass-produced products.
Yeah,
you realize that it's less than mass-produced. It's more than handmade, but less than mass-produced. That's military hardware. Well, Apollo hardware is even more towards the hand-built. Like you can see the machinist's hands on the pieces that you're handling.
You can see the brush marks and the grinds. And
the other thing I didn't know is, and I've always wondered this, like how do they make the wrist things totally seal? How do they make the neck things seal?
Yeah.
They don't. They seal, but they're not a perfect seal. They're leaking air out of the wrists and the neck of the spacesuits. And that's one of the things that's really difficult about pressurizing it because they're leaking. And it's not really possible to make a perfect click on the glove slip joint that doesn't bleed air. Because
the gasket wears out over a short period of time or whatever.
Exactly, especially under the conditions it's under, under the temperature differentials.
Well,
Sandra Bullock needs to take it off in 15 seconds and not wear the cooling stuff.
It's so nice that she didn't have to wear a cooling
suit.
That's how cool Sandy is.
Nothing unflappable.
In Canada, really, it was an amazing, amazing day. I had no idea at the beginning of the day that I would be able to satisfy some deep levels of curiosity about space equipment, especially because during that time, I was taking delivery back in San Francisco, and it arrived before I got back, of my Mercury area suit built for me by Magic Wardrobe Elizabeth Galleria. We're going to go over that in one of the videos soon.
Yeah.
But like lots of space stuff. And I even took Julia to see Gravity in Canada. I saw it for my second time, she for her first, and I mean it's so much fun. It's such an amazing.
So you had a good December,
a really good December.
Holiday.
Then we got let's see. Just to recap it all, the boys met me in Birmingham. Then we went to Huntsville, and then we went to South Carolina. In South Carolina, we met up with Julia. Julia flew to South Carolina, and her oldest, bestest friend lives there, and took us on a wonderful long night walk through North Charleston, which is.
It's beautiful.
Such a beautiful city. Mind-blowingly gorgeous.
One of the great old towns of the South.
Truly. Yeah. I mean, we found all these little hidden alleyways to walk down that every single one feels like Jim Henson built it.
Yeah. Cobblestones everywhere.
Cobblestones. Gorgeous.
It's one of the few places I've been in the United States that feels both small and old.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then we, the next morning, which was, I think, the 23rd, we flew up to New York, spent the day in New York buying some Christmas presents and getting ready. And then we drove out to Terrytown, where I grew up, to have Christmas with my mom and my whole family. Stayed there until the 27th and flew back to San Francisco. Promptly got a shitty cold. Both Julie and I laid out for 2 days flat.
The fact that you dodged that through the entire tour and it waited until you got home, pretty good.
And then normally every year, Julie and I like to throw a New Year's party. This year it was like 10 people. We just ended up being like, let's just invite only the smallest group, and it was really perfectly paced because we were both still pretty like coffee and not in perfect form.
Sure.
And then,
cool.
the planning week was tiring. This week we've got off. So, of course, I've been working tons to get stuff ready. And then we start filming on Monday.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's it.
2014.
2014 is now I'm starting to get used to writing 1-4 at the end of
I did the first podcast yesterday with the 2014 and I had to go back and change it after I'd already uploaded it. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, these are the problems we face.
Wait, just are we out of time?
We can go.
I just
we haven't
wanted to
asked
know
Norm
about,
at all.
We haven't asked Norm at all what's going on, how your holiday was.
Oh no, it was good. It was good. I didn't do any traveling. Stayed home and worked on some projects. Yeah, I don't have children, so I'm good.
All Norm's disposable income, board games, and
Test.com. That's my child.
That's your child. Yes, it is.
And on that note, we will be back next week. If you are interested, we have a bunch of stuff to talk about. I think since the last time we talked, we launched premium memberships. We might have mentioned it once or twice. What that means is that we have occasional. They're not exactly so frequently there's stuff that maybe wouldn't be very interesting on YouTube or to a broader audience. There's for people stuff. It's stuff for people who really like the site or like us. We did a full-length, unauthorized AI commentary where we talked over the movie and ruined it for everyone. We have a whole series. We're doing like longer versions of stuff that we compress down for YouTube. We'll do some live Q&As. Maybe one morning we'll come down and like watch some old Saturday morning shows and talk over that.
We have some other ideas for movies we're going to do commentary for, unauthorized commentary.
You get it. There's a newsletter every month. Or it's not really a newsletter. It's more of a note. The idea is that it's personal and not, hey, here, look at all this awesome stuff we posted on our website. You should click some links. It's more, here's a thing that we're really interested in, but maybe doesn't fit on the site.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of other stuff. There'll be stuff you can buy and like special offers and all sorts of cool stuff coming down the line. Maybe even some live events. So that's premium memberships. If you want to find out about that, go to tested.com. There's a big link at the top that says subscribe or support us or premium. If you click that, it gives you the whole details. And then there's always good stuff on the site. So yeah, that's it. That's it for us.
Thanks, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, see you next week.
We'll see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.